Can you imagine not speaking to your own brother for 22 years? Not a single word? I was 54. He was 51 when we had that fight about Dad's inheritance. What happened next changed both our lives forever, and not in the way you'd expect. We stood on opposite sides of Mom's grave at her funeral, like strangers. I learned about his grandson's birth from a neighbor. Imagine that kind of pain. Then last year, after all this time, my phone rang. First call in 22 years. What he said in that conversation, well, it completely destroyed me and rebuilt me at the same time. Friends, write in the comments where you're watching us from. And hit like if you want to know what's the most surprising and unexpected part. You know how family fights start. They always seem so important in the moment, don't they? Our father had just passed away, and there was this house, some savings, the usual stuff families argue about. My brother thought I was being greedy. I thought he was being naive about the lawyer's fees. The argument got heated. We said things, terrible things, that brothers should never say to each other. I called him selfish, he called me manipulative, and we both meant every word in that moment. That night I went home thinking he'd call to apologize. After all, I was the older brother, right? He went home thinking the exact same thing about me. That I'd be the one to pick up the phone first. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and neither of us made that call. Pride is a funny thing. It starts as a shield to protect your dignity, but ends up becoming your prison. After the first year, it became awkward. How do you call someone after a whole year of silence? What would I say? Sorry for not calling for 365 days? It sounded ridiculous even to me. By year 5, something terrifying happened. Living without my brother started feeling normal. That's the scariest part of losing someone while they're still alive. You adapt. You move on. You forget the pain. I developed new routines, made new friends, found other people to share my stories with. But here's what I didn't realize. Some holes in your life can never be filled by other people. My brother wasn't just my brother. He was the only other person who remembered our childhood the same way. He was the only one who knew why I was afraid of thunderstorms, or why Dad's cologne still made me cry. For 22 years, I carried all those memories alone. And let me tell you, memories are heavy when you can't share them. Then came the events that should have brought us together, but only highlighted how far apart we'd grown. Mom got sick, really sick, and we had to take care of her. But we did it in shifts. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, me. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, him. Sundays, we alternated. Can you imagine how that felt for our mother? Her 2 sons avoiding each other while she was dying? She begged us to reconcile. Said it was breaking her heart more than the cancer was. We both promised her we'd work it out after she got better. Both of us lying to a dying woman. After she got better, we said. After the treatment. After she comes home. After. Always after. But after never came. At least, not while she was alive to see it. At her funeral, we stood on opposite sides of the grave like we were strangers, not brothers who shared a womb together. People at the funeral kept looking at us, whispering, wondering why the sons weren't comforting each other. I wanted to walk over to him so badly, especially when I saw him crying. The same way he cried when our dog died in 1987. But 22 years of silence builds a wall that seems impossible to climb, even in moments of shared grief. Life kept happening around our stubbornness. His daughter got married, had children, celebrated birthdays, achievements. I learned about these milestones the way you learn about celebrities' lives, through other people, through social media, through chance encounters. His daughter sent me a wedding invitation. I still have it, never opened, sitting in my desk drawer like evidence of my cowardice. I drove by the church that day, sat in my car across the street, watched people go in, watched them come out for photos. I saw him in his father of the bride suit, walking his daughter down the aisle through the open church doors. I should have been there. Should have been his best man, or at least a guest. Should have hugged him. Told him how proud I was. Instead, I drove home and spent the evening wondering what kind of man misses his own brother's daughter's wedding over money that was spent decades ago. But the worst part wasn't the big events I missed. It was the small moments that accumulated over 2 decades. 22 Christmases without him. 22 birthdays unacknowledged. 22 New Years without resolving to call. I had stories to tell him. About my job, my travels, books I read that reminded me of things we discussed as kids. He probably had stories too, about his grandchildren's first words, about retiring, about getting older and wondering where time went. Scientists have actually proven that holding grudges literally damages your body, increases blood pressure, weakens your immune system, shortens your life. I was literally paying with my health for the privilege of being right about something I could barely remember anymore. My blood pressure medication increased 3 times over those years. Coincidence? I don't think so. I started having trouble sleeping, especially around anniversaries. Dad's death, Mom's death, that last fight we had. My wife used to say I carried anger in my shoulders. They were always tense, always aching, like I was permanently braced for a fight. Then last year, on a Tuesday evening in November, my phone rang with a number I recognized but hadn't seen in decades. I stared at that phone for 4 rings, my heart pounding like I was about to jump out of an airplane. His voice sounded so old, so different from the voice that had yelled at me 22 years earlier. He didn't say hello, didn't apologize, didn't explain where he'd been. Just said 8 words that changed everything. I'm 73, you're 76. We're idiots. That's what he said. And I started laughing and crying at the same time. Then he asked if he could come over, and I said yes so fast I probably broke some kind of record. He arrived 20 minutes later. 20 minutes to cross a distance that had taken 22 years to travel. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we used to do homework as kids when we visited. For the first 10 minutes, we just sat there in silence. Not the angry silence of our fight, but the comfortable silence of people finding their way back to each other. Then he started talking about Dad's garden, how he wished he'd kept it up, how the tomatoes were never as good as Dad's. I told him about Mom's recipe box, how I'd been trying to make her apple pie but could never get the crust right. We talked until 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning? 2 old men staying up like teenagers, catching up on 22 years. We talked about everything except the fight, not because we were avoiding it, but because it suddenly seemed so small, so irrelevant. It was like those 22 years had been a commercial break in the middle of a conversation we'd been having our whole lives. He told me about his grandson learning to ride a bike, about retiring and feeling useless, about missing our parents differently than I did, but just as much. I told him about my divorce, about changing careers at 60, about how I'd started volunteering at the animal shelter because I was lonely. When he finally left that night, we hugged, actually hugged, for the first time since we were middle-aged men. It felt like coming home after the longest trip of my life. Like finding a part of myself I'd forgotten was missing. That night I slept better than I had in years. My shoulders weren't tense, my jaw wasn't clenched, my heart wasn't heavy. We started calling each other every few days, sharing the small things we'd missed sharing for over 2 decades. He came to my birthday dinner. I went to his grandson's baseball game. We started being brothers again instead of just related strangers. For 8 months, we had what felt like a second childhood, or maybe a first adulthood, where we actually appreciated each other. Then he called me on a Wednesday morning with news that stopped my world completely. He had cancer. Stage 4, maybe 6 months. Had he known when he made that first call? Did he call because he knew? I never asked, and now I never can. Those last 8 months weren't about the cancer. They were about being brothers, about making up for lost time, even though we both knew it wasn't nearly enough. I was with him at the end, holding his hand, telling him stories about when we were kids and thought we'd live forever. His last coherent words to me were, "Thank you for calling me back." Except I hadn't called him back. He had called me. But I understood what he meant. He was thanking me for answering, for opening the door, for letting him come home. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. Talked about the brother I'd known for 73 years, not the stranger I'd created for 22 of them. I realized that the fight that seemed so important, so worth defending, had cost us more than any amount of money ever could. We fought over our father's legacy, and in the process, we destroyed our own legacy as brothers who loved each other. Pride is the most expensive luxury in the world. It costs more than any car, any house, any possession you could ever want. But here's what I learned, what cost me 22 years to understand. Someone has to go first. Someone has to make the call. It doesn't matter who is right, who is wrong, who said what, or who started it. What matters is who's brave enough to end it. If you're watching this and there's someone in your life you haven't spoken to, a year, 5 years, 20 years, call them today. Don't call them for their sake. Call them for your own sake. Because carrying that anger is heavier than any apology could ever be. Don't wait for them to call first. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for them to apologize. Just call. Because the only thing worse than losing someone you love is losing them while they're still alive and choosing not to fix it. My brother and I had 8 months after our reconciliation. 8 precious months that almost didn't happen because of stupid pride. Some people don't get 8 months. Some don't get 8 days. Some get the busy signal when they finally decide to call. Time is the only thing we can't get back, and forgiveness is the only thing that can stop us from wasting it. Don't let pride rob you of love. Don't let stubbornness steal your family. Don't let being right cost you being happy. Pick up the phone, send the text, show up at their door, whatever it takes to start healing what's been broken. Because 22 years taught me that no fight is worth losing a brother, and no amount of being right is worth being alone.